Welcome to our deep dive, and today it's clean language. You might not have heard of it before, but it's basically this fascinating way of asking questions that helps you understand how people think, especially through the metaphors they use. And get this, research suggests that we use an average of 6 metaphors every minute in conversation. We just don't realize it because they've become so commonplace.
That's right. They're so woven into our everyday language that we just don't even notice them anymore.
6-minute minute, though? Really? That's incredible. I mean, I'm already intrigued. I'm guessing you're going to tell me that clean language can help us see those hidden metaphors and then actually use them to, like, change things.
Absolutely. It helps us uncover those underlying thought patterns. And by doing so, it can be used for all sorts of things. Gathering information, shifting someone's emotional state, even motivating them to make changes.
Okay, so let's break down what clean language actually is. I mean, it's not literally a separate language, is it?
Not at all. It's more of a precise way of asking questions, designed to help people explore their own thinking by focusing on their use of metaphors.
So it's like linguistic detective work, looking for clues in the way people speak.
Exactly. Paying close attention to the words people use, especially the metaphorical ones, and treating those as a window into their unconscious mind.
Okay, this is fascinating. But I'm a show-me kind of person. Can you give me a real-world example of how this works?
Okay, let's say you're working with a team, and they're struggling to collaborate effectively. You could use clean language to explore their metaphors for work. And you might discover that one person sees themselves as a Formula One driver, focused on speed and precision, while another person sees themselves as a butterfly, flitting between ideas, exploring different perspectives. And then a third person might describe their work style as being like a meditating monk, seeking stillness and deep focus.
Wow, that's a powerful way to illustrate how different people approach their work. I can already see how understanding those underlying metaphors could help a team communicate and collaborate more effectively.
Exactly. It helps bring those unconscious metaphors to the surface, making them visible and discussable. And once those metaphors are out in the open, the team can start to understand each other better and find ways to work together more harmoniously.
Okay, so we've established that metaphors are everywhere, and that clean language can help us unearth them. But why does this matter so much? What's the big deal about metaphors anyway?
Well, metaphors are more than just figures of speech. They shape our understanding of the world. We're constantly comparing things to understand them. This chair is like other chairs I've seen. This problem is like a tangled knot. And those comparisons, those metaphors, they influence not just our thoughts, but our actions and even our feelings.
So you're saying that the way we talk about things actually influences how we experience those things?
Exactly. There's even research showing that holding a warm drink can make you perceive other people as warmer or more friendly. So our minds are constantly making these metaphorical connections, often without us even realizing it.
This is blowing my mind. I never really realized how deeply metaphors influence our perceptions and behaviors. So how does clean language actually work in practice? Are there specific questions that you ask to unlock these metaphorical treasures?
There are, and you might be surprised at how simple they are.
Okay, I'm all ears. Let's hear these magical questions.
Okay, so two of the most fundamental clean language questions are, what kind of X is that X? And is there anything else about X, where X represents any word or phrase the person has used? We call these the two lazy Jedi questions.
Lazy Jedi questions. I like the sound of that. Minimal effort, maximum impact. Just like a Jedi using the Force.
Exactly. Powerful tools for uncovering hidden depths, but they require very little effort to use. So, for example, let's say someone says, I feel stuck in my career, you might ask. And what kind of stuck is that stuck?
Ah, I see. So you're not offering advice or solutions. You're simply inviting them to explore their experience of feeling stuck in more detail.
That's right.
And what's fascinating here is how that one question can potentially open up a whole world of understanding.
It can. And the beauty of these questions is that they can be applied in so many different contexts. Imagine you're on a date and you want to learn more about your companion. Instead of resorting to small talk, you could ask, you mentioned that your work can be challenging. What kind of challenging is that challenging?
That's a great example. And I'm guessing the second question, is there anything else about X? Helps to deepen that exploration even further.
Absolutely. So you might follow up with, and is there anything else about that challenging? This encourages them to elaborate, to uncover additional layers of meaning and nuance. And what's important here is that you're using their own words, which creates a sense of validation and encourages them to delve deeper into their own experience.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these seemingly simple questions can be incredibly powerful. But I'm also the kind of person who likes to know the rules. Are there any hard and fast rules for using clean language? Is there like some secret manual hidden away somewhere?
There really are no hard and fast rules, which might seem counterintuitive. It's more about principles than strict regulations, developing a certain mindset, a sensitivity to language, and a deep respect for the other person's model of the world.
So it's less about memorizing a script and more about cultivating a certain way of listening and responding.
Exactly. There are different ways to ask the questions, like using full versions or short versions depending on the context. But ultimately, it's about being present, attentive, and responsive to the person you're engaging with.
Makes sense. It's about being adaptable, like a Jedi choosing the right lightsaber technique for each situation. But speaking of different ways to ask the questions, you mentioned something earlier called clean language syntax. What exactly is that?
Okay, so that refers to the structure of the questions. The full syntax involves repeating the person's exact words, adding a focusing phrase, and then asking the question. So for example, going back to the stuck example, you could ask, and you said you feel stuck in your career. And when stuck, what kind of stuck is that stuck?
Yeah, I can see how that repetition and focus could create kind of a hypnotic effect, guiding the person deeper into their own experience.
It can, but there are also times when a shorter version is more appropriate, like in a casual conversation where that level of formality might feel a little bit out of place. In those situations, you might simply ask, and what kind of stuck?
So it's about choosing the right tool for the job, depending on the context. This is all so fascinating. But I do have a question about how effective clean language can be. Can it really help people who are facing like seemingly insurmountable challenges? Is there a limit to what it can achieve?
That's a great question, and it's one that comes up a lot. Yeah, many approaches to change focus on fixing the problem. But clean language takes a different approach. It's about understanding the person's experience, their perception of the world, their internal model of reality.
I like that you use the word model. It suggests that we're not trying to change the person or their reality, but rather to understand it more deeply.
Precisely. Imagine building a miniature model of a city. You wouldn't try to change the city itself. You'd observe it carefully and try to replicate it as accurately as possible in your model. Clean language works similarly. The practitioner listens carefully to the person's language, their metaphors, and constructs a model of their world in their mind.
So it's like a practitioner is creating a mental map of the person's inner landscape, and through that map, they can help the person to see their own thinking more clearly.
Exactly. It's not about imposing solutions, but about facilitating self-discovery, even in challenging situations. Clean language can help to shift the focus. Instead of dwelling on the problem, it can help to direct attention towards the desired outcome, however challenging that outcome might be.
So even if the situation seems hopeless, clean language can help people to explore their options and find a way forward.
That's right. It's about empowering people to navigate their own challenges and to find their own solutions. Clean language doesn't provide answers. It unlocks them.
This is giving me a whole new perspective on the power of language. It's like clean language is a key. That can unlock hidden potential, even in the most difficult situations.
That's a great way to put it. It doesn't offer quick fixes or magical solutions, but it empowers individuals to confront their challenges, explore their desires, and ultimately chart their own course.
This is all so empowering, but I have another question. Can clean language be combined with other techniques, or is it like a standalone approach?
It could be used on its own or integrated with other approaches. In its purest form, it involves simply asking clean language questions, using the person's own words, and refraining from offering advice or judgments.
So no imposing your own opinions
That's
or
right.
trying to fix the person.
Exactly. It's about respecting their model of the world and allowing them to discover their own insights.
But you mentioned it's not always that straightforward.
That's right. Many practitioners combine clean language with other techniques. They might use it for a portion of a session and use other methods for the rest. Or they might integrate clean language questions into a coaching or therapy session that also uses other tools and techniques.
So it's like adding clean language to their toolkit, using it alongside other tools.
Yeah. And while there are benefits to blending approaches, it's important to understand the principles of pure clean language, even if you choose to combine it with other techniques.
Why is that?
Because pure clean language, while seemingly simple, is quite radical. It pushes the boundaries of non-directiveness, requiring a deep level of trust in the process and in the client's own inner wisdom.
So even if you're not using pure clean language all the time, understanding its principles can actually enhance your work and deepen your understanding of human communication.
Absolutely. It's like learning a new language. Even if you only use a few phrases, it expands your worldview and it enriches your understanding of communication.
I love that analogy. It's like clean language is giving us a new language for understanding the human experience, a language that speaks directly to the unconscious mind. And speaking of the unconscious mind, I've always been a bit curious about hypnosis. Is clean language a form of hypnosis? Am I being secretly hypnotized right now?
Well, it's understandable why people might wonder that. Clean language does have roots in hypnosis, but it's not hypnosis in the traditional sense. There are no swinging watches or commands to sleep.
Okay, good to know. But you mentioned that clean language can induce like a trance-like state. How is that possible without using traditional hypnotic techniques?
Well, the way the questions are asked can create a state of deep relaxation and inward focus, the gentle tone, the repetitive structure, the focus on the person's own words. All of these contribute to a state of heightened awareness and receptivity.
So it's like the questions themselves are a form of subtle suggestion, guiding the person's attention inward.
You could say that. The questions encourage the person to explore their own inner world. And in that state of deep focus, they might experience time distortion, vivid imagery, and even emotional breakthroughs.
Wow, that's remarkable. But can clean language be used on oneself? Or do you need a practitioner to guide you?
You can use clean language on yourself, but it might not be as effective as working with a skilled practitioner.
Why is that? Is it like trying to tickle yourself? You just can't quite get there?
It's similar. When you're using clean language on yourself, you're limited by your own perspective and thinking patterns. A practitioner can offer a fresh perspective, guide your attention in new directions, and help you see things that you might not have noticed on your own.
So it's like having a guide in a vast, unexplored wilderness. They can help you navigate the terrain and discover hidden treasures.
That's a great analogy. A skilled practitioner can help you push the boundaries of your own thinking, uncovering insights and possibilities that might have remained hidden.
Okay, I'm convinced. But I have another question. I've always struggled with visualization. I can't seem to see pictures in my head. Does that mean that clean language won't work for me?
Not at all. While clean language can evoke imagery, it's not limited to visual thinkers. The questions are sense neutral, meaning they can be used to explore any sensory modality, whether it's visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, or gustatory.
Wait, hold on. You're saying clean language works with smells and tastes too? That's incredible. But what about people who don't experience vivid imagery at all? Can clean language still be helpful for them?
Absolutely. Clean language is about exploring the structure of thinking, not the content of specific senses. So even if someone doesn't see pictures in their head, they can still explore their metaphors using other senses or even abstract concepts. The key is to focus on the meaning and the emotional resonance of the metaphors, rather than the literal sensory experience.
So you're saying that everyone can benefit from clean language, regardless of their thinking style or their sensory preferences?
Exactly. It's a versatile tool that can be adapted to a wide range of individuals and situations.
Okay, I have to ask, is there a danger that clean language could be used for manipulation? It seems like such a powerful tool for influencing people's thinking.
That's a valid concern. Like any powerful tool, clean language can be misused, but its ethical application really depends on the skill and intention of the practitioner.
So it's like a lightsaber. It can be used for good or evil, depending on the wielder.
That's a great analogy. In the hands of a skilled and ethical practitioner, clean language is a force for positive change. It's about empowering individuals, not controlling them.
But how can you be sure that someone is using clean language ethically?
That's where training, experience, and ethical guidelines come in. Reputable clean language training programs emphasize ethical considerations, teaching practitioners how to use the questions respectfully and responsibly.
So it's not just about learning the techniques, it's about developing a strong ethical foundation as well.
Precisely. Clean language is a powerful tool, and like any powerful tool, it should be used with care and respect for the other person.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I'm starting to see metaphors everywhere now. It's like a whole new world has opened up to me.
That's the magic of clean language. It makes the invisible visible, helping us understand the power of language to shape our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions.
Okay, before we move on, I have one final question for this part of our deep dive. You mentioned that clean language can be surprisingly influential, even though it's non-directive. How is that possible?
That's the paradox of clean language. By not trying to influence, It becomes incredibly influential. You see, clean language creates a space for self-discovery. It allows individuals to come to their own conclusions, to convince themselves, rather than being persuaded by external arguments.
So it's like planting a seed and letting it grow naturally, rather than forcing it to sprout.
Exactly. And while clean language doesn't involve direct persuasion, practitioners still influence the process in subtle ways. They choose which questions to ask, which words to focus on, and how to frame the conversation. They also create a certain environment through their body language, their tone of voice, and the overall setting. All of these factors subtly influence the direction of the exploration.
So it's like a dance, this delicate interplay between facilitator and client, guiding the conversation towards deeper understanding.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It's a collaborative process, a dance of discovery, where both parties contribute to the unfolding insights. Welcome back to our deep dive into clean language. Before we move on, I wanted to touch on something you mentioned earlier, the idea that clean language can be so influential, even while being non-directive.
Yeah, that really struck me. It seems kind of counterintuitive, that by not trying to push your own agenda, you actually end up having more influence.
It is a paradox. But think of it this way. By creating a space for self-discovery, clean language allows people to come to their own conclusions,
Yeah.
to convince themselves, rather than being persuaded by someone else.
So it's like planting a seed and letting it grow organically instead of trying to force it to sprout.
Exactly. People are far more likely to embrace an idea when they feel like they've arrived at it themselves.
Makes a lot of sense. Now, I'm really curious to hear about some of the different areas where clean language can be applied. You hinted at business and relationships earlier. Where should we dive in first?
Let's start with the business world. Imagine a high-stakes negotiation where two parties seem to be at an impasse. Clean language can be really helpful in breaking through those barriers by uncovering the underlying needs and motivations of each side.
I can see how that would be helpful. Instead of getting bogged down in positional arguments, you're encouraging people to explore the deeper reasons behind their positions. But how does that actually play out in a real negotiation?
Let's say one party is adamant that they need a certain price for their product, while the other party is unwilling to pay that much. Instead of arguing about the numbers, a skilled, clean language facilitator might ask, "What's important to you about that price?" Or, "What would having that price allow you to do?"
Those questions seem so simple, but I can see how they could really shift the dynamic. Instead of focusing on winning or losing, you're encouraging a deeper understanding of each other's perspectives and priorities. That could lead to some creative solutions that wouldn't have even been considered before.
Exactly. Clean language helps people to move beyond the surface level of demands and counter-demands and into a space where they can explore shared interests and potential win-win solutions.
I'm starting to understand why you called this a deep dive. It's like we're peeling back the layers of communication and uncovering the hidden complexities underneath. And speaking of complexities, how about relationships? I know you mentioned that clean language can be helpful there too.
Well, relationships thrive on communication, and clean language can be a real game changer for improving the way couples, families, and even friends communicate with each other.
I'm intrigued. Especially because, relationships can be such fertile ground for miscommunication and conflict. How can clean language help to navigate those tricky waters?
Well, think about a couple that's constantly arguing about the same issues. Clean language can help them to understand the deeper meaning behind their arguments. For example, if they're always fighting about chores, it might not really be about the chores themselves, but about something deeper, like feeling valued or respected.
That's a great example. It's like you're saying the surface level argument is just a symptom of a deeper underlying issue.
Exactly. And clean language can help to uncover that deeper issue by exploring the metaphors and language each partner uses. Instead of saying, "You never do the dishes," one partner might say, "It feels like I'm drowning in housework," and you're just standing on the shore watching.
Wow, that's powerful. And I can see how responding to that statement with a clean language question like, "And when you feel like you're drowning, what kind of drowning is that drowning?" could open up a whole new level of understanding and empathy.
It can. By exploring the metaphors each partner uses, clean language helps to reveal the underlying emotions and needs that are driving the conflict.
This is really making me rethink the way I communicate, both in my personal and my professional relationships. And speaking of professional relationships, you mentioned earlier that clean language is being used in leadership development. Can you tell me more about that?
Absolutely. Clean language can be a powerful tool for leaders who want to foster a more collaborative
Yeah.
and innovative work environment.
Okay, I'm all ears. How does that work in practice?
So instead of simply dictating their vision
Mm.
or telling their team what to do, a leader trained in clean language might ask, what kind of team do we want to be? Or what kind of future do we want to create together?
Those are great questions. And I can see how using clean language to explore those questions could lead to a much richer and more engaging dialogue.
It can. And as the team explores those questions, they might uncover shared values, aspirations, and ideas that can help to shape a more inspiring and motivating vision for the future.
That's so powerful. Instead of like a top-down approach where the leader sets the agenda, you're creating a more collaborative environment where everyone feels empowered to contribute their ideas and
Yeah,
to shape the future of the organization.
exactly. And that sense of shared ownership and purpose can be incredibly motivating and lead to greater levels of innovation and engagement.
This is truly inspiring, but I'm also curious to hear about some of the more unexpected applications for clean language. You mentioned that it can be used in areas like sales and market research. How does that work?
Well, clean language can be a game changer in sales by helping salespeople to truly understand their customers' needs and motivations. Instead of relying on high-pressure tactics or generic pitches, a salesperson trained in clean language can use those powerful questions to uncover the customer's underlying desires and tailor their approach accordingly.
So it's about moving beyond the surface level of features and benefits and connecting with the customer on a deeper, more emotional level.
Exactly. For example, instead of simply listing the features of a car, a salesperson might ask, what kind of car would truly make you feel alive? Or, when you think about driving this car, what kind of experience do you imagine?
I love those questions. They're so much more engaging and thought-provoking than a standard sales pitch. And I can see how the answers could provide valuable insights into the customer's aspirations and desires, allowing the salesperson to tailor their approach and make a more meaningful connection.
Precisely. Those deeper connections can lead to increased trust, loyalty, and ultimately sales.
This is all so fascinating. It really feels like clean language is opening up a whole new world of possibilities. For communication and understanding, what about market research? How can asking someone, what kind of car is that car, reveal anything useful about consumer preferences?
It might seem strange at first, but those simple questions can unlock a wealth of information about how consumers perceive products and brands. By exploring the metaphors people use to describe a product, market researchers can gain a deeper understanding of the emotional associations and subconscious beliefs that influence their purchasing decisions.
Can you give me a specific example of how this might work in a market research setting?
Let's imagine a company is developing a new line of athletic wear. They could use clean language to explore how potential customers perceive different brands of athletic wear. They might ask questions like, what kind of person do you imagine wearing this brand? Or, if this brand were a color, what color would it be?
I see. So by exploring those metaphorical associations, the company can gain a deeper understanding of the brand's image and how it resonates with consumers.
Exactly. And that information can be invaluable for developing marketing campaigns that truly connect with the target audience.
This is all so eye-opening. I'm starting to see how clean language can be applied in so many different areas of life, from personal relationships to business negotiations and even market research. It really feels like a versatile tool for enhancing communication and understanding across the board. But before we move on to part 3, I'm curious to hear more about how clean language can be used for personal growth and transformation.
That's a great segue into our next section, where we'll explore the power of clean language for self-discovery, overcoming limiting beliefs, and creating lasting change.
Welcome back to the deep dive. It's amazing how we've only just scratched the surface of clean language, and already I'm like finding myself listening to conversations in a totally different way.
Yeah, it's true. Once you start to notice the metaphors people use, you can't unhear them, and it really changes how you listen and respond.
You mentioned that clean language can be a powerful tool for personal growth and transformation. I'm excited to dive into that aspect now. What kind of transformation are we talking about?
Okay, well, think about a time when you felt kind of stuck or limited by a negative belief, something like, I'm not good enough, or I'll never be able to achieve that. These beliefs often operate on an unconscious level, influencing our choices and behaviors without us even realizing it. And clean language can help to bring those beliefs to the surface, making them visible and therefore challengeable.
So it's like shining a light into those dark corners of our minds where those limiting beliefs are hiding.
Exactly. And once those beliefs are brought into the light of conscious awareness, we can start to question their validity and explore alternative perspectives.
That makes sense. But how does clean language actually help us to challenge those beliefs? Is it simply a matter of asking those Jedi questions about our negative thoughts?
It can be that simple, but there's a little bit more to it. Let's say someone is struggling with the belief, I'm not creative, instead of trying to argue with that belief directly. A clean language facilitator might ask, and when you think about not being creative, what kind of not creative is that not creative?
That's interesting. You're not denying the person's experience, but you're also not reinforcing the negative belief. You're simply inviting them to explore it in more detail.
Right. And as they explore that belief through the clean language questions, they might start to notice that it's based on certain assumptions or past experiences. That might not even be relevant anymore. They might also start to identify exceptions to the rule, times when they have been creative, even if they didn't recognize it at the time.
So clean language can help us to deconstruct those negative beliefs by breaking them down into their component parts and
Right.
examining them more objectively.
Exactly. And as we start to question the validity of those beliefs, we create space for new, more empowering beliefs to emerge.
This is so fascinating. It's like clean language is a tool for rewiring our brains, for creating new neural pathways that lead to more positive and fulfilling experiences.
That's a great analogy. By changing the way we think and talk about ourselves, we can literally change our brains
Yeah.
and create new possibilities for ourselves.
I'm really starting to see the transformative potential of this approach, but beyond challenging limiting beliefs. What other ways can clean language be used for personal growth?
Well, clean language can also be used for goal setting
Hmm.
and motivation. Let's say you have a goal that you've been struggling to achieve. You can use clean language to explore that goal in more detail, and you might uncover hidden obstacles or limiting beliefs that have been holding you back.
So instead of just setting a goal and hoping for the best, you're taking a deeper dive into the motivations behind the goal and identifying potential roadblocks.
Exactly. For example, if your goal is to start a business, you might ask yourself, what kind of business would truly light me up? Or when I imagine myself running this business, what kind of feelings come up?
I love those questions. They're so much more inspiring than just focusing on the logistics and the practicalities of starting a business.
They are. And by exploring those deeper motivations, you're more likely to tap into the passion and the energy you need to overcome challenges and achieve your goals.
This is incredibly inspiring. It feels like clean language can be a tool for not only achieving our goals, but for creating a life that is more aligned with our values and aspirations.
That's the ultimate goal, to help people create lives that are meaningful and fulfilling. And clean language can play a powerful role in that process.
This has been such an enlightening deep dive into the world of clean language. I'm starting to see how this seemingly simple technique can have such a profound impact on our communication, our relationships, and our own personal growth.
It's true. The potential of clean language is vast. And as more people discover its power, I believe we'll see it being used in more and more innovative and transformative ways.
Well, I, for one, am excited to see what the future holds for clean language and for all of us who are embracing this new way of communicating and connecting with the world. I encourage everyone listening to explore the resources we'll provide and to start experimenting with clean language in their own lives. You might be surprised at the insights and the transformations that await you. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive of